So I'm going to do a little update of what's happened in my life quickly so that then I could enter into this next stage of where the talk of going is, entering into heaven and bringing in your grace. So just briefly, in a few sound bites, last August, July, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, ended up having surgery, told I needed chemo, was released from my ministry, had no income, couldn't stay in my apartment, didn't know where I was going to go, ended up in my daughter's basement in her house, and all this stuff began to happen to me, and I felt totally hopeless. I mean, I went down to ground zero. I went into the pit. That's part of the hero's journey, I've come to find out. And so as I sort of lay there in my chemo state, I kept asking, what next? There's something in here, Optimistically, I knew there had to be something, but I was so feeling so hopeless that even when my well-meaning friends would say, well, you have to have hope, I would just get irritated and angry. I felt no hope. And I realized that that was perfect, because what I came to find out was that there is no thing as positive and a negative emotions and feelings. We put feelings into positive and negative boxes. However, all feelings are necessary and important indicators of where we're at on our hero's journey, and that the only way that we can get through those of a lower vibrational level is to go through them. And by all means, in order to lift the energies of the planet, we have to go through them. And so you may be noticing in your own personal life, like, oh my God, I've been on this path for a long, long time, and things seem to be getting worse sometimes. And, when do I enter the kingdom? Am I only halfway to heaven? So I was here in February. Then March 31st, I got a call from my nephew that my father was dying. On April 1st, I was in my car with my 2 dogs driving to Chicago. And, here's these 2 pups, and I'm driving 12 hours. And they did really good for the first 3 hours. And then it was like having 3-year-olds in the car. If you've ever been a mom or dad and you start driving, the kids might sleep for the first few hours, and then they start going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And the behavior goes down from there, right? I was like, oh my God, it's like having these 3-year-olds. They were jumping. I put them in the back seat, and I made this block. They jumped over the headrest. They both wanted to be in my lap at the same time, and I was like, are we there yet? And I started thinking about heaven. And oftentimes in our spiritual journey, we might feel like, are we there yet? Am I there yet? How much longer do I have to do this transformational stuff? I want to just enter the kingdom of heaven. So first of all, I want to talk about what is heaven, because this is important to where we're going to go in this talk. So heaven oftentimes seems to be a place. As human beings, we may have a perception of heaven being a place, and I began to think about this when babies are born and they are about 9 months old, they begin to cry every time the mom leaves the room, or because that's their first attachment. And the reason why I came to learn that happens is because they have no concept of no spatial concept developed yet. So when the mom goes around the doorway to the baby, it's like she dropped off the ends of the earth, because they have no idea of space. And so they begin to develop it, and then I think as we get older, we have to undevelop it. Because when we get stuck in the linear path that time and space seems to go, then we seem to be stuck. I began to think about heaven like if you're looking at railroad tracks, and you're standing at railroad tracks, and there's 2 parallel bars, the rails. But if you have a shift in perception and you look out, it seems like they connected, don't they? So I think that's what happens is that we begin to see that there's our earthly experience and then there's our spiritual selves, but they seem to be very separate. But as we move along the tracks of life and we begin to live in the present moment and we begin to have a shift of perception, we begin to see that there's no duality. And piece by piece, we have these experiences that kind of shift our perception, and then we're out of it. And then we might have a longer piece of that reality, and then we're out of it. As we transform, that's what it's like. What I came to find out is as we awaken, when we become awakened spirits on this planet, the perception shifts forever. So in the midst of what seems to be this separation and from our spirit to our human self begins to be integrated fully. And we live what Jesus said of being in the world, but not of it. That doesn't mean that everything seems to be perfect. In fact, a lot of things can happen. I want to first say Charles Fillmore talked about heaven, and he said that he called it a state of consciousness formed through the belief in the reality of things external. That's what he says about heaven. It's a consciousness that we perceive things as external. So in reality, as human beings, a long time ago, we were trying to make sense of what it meant to be human. And so we began to think of the heavens as being someplace out there, and then we were these physical beings. But now, actually, we're having that shift of consciousness where we realize that that is the reality. Quantum physics defines heaven as parallel universes. That actually we live in a parallel universe all the time, and we can have access to either one of those, and we can have access to the same reality at the same time. There was an experiment, I forgot what it was called, but some of you might remember it. It was when the quantum physics were able to observe that a cat could be alive 1 second and dead the next second, and it kept going back and forth. And actually the cat they found out was living in both realities at the same time. It's hard to wrap our head around that, but we're beginning to find evidence that things don't always appear as we perceive them to be. Now, Jesus called heaven the kingdom. And what he said is that we should first seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And he said all things would be added unto us, and that's in Matthew. So I'm going to talk about a few things that Jesus said about the kingdom. So one of the first things is we first seek the kingdom. And when we're seeking the kingdom, that's what we're doing when we're doing all this transformational work. We're seeking, we know there's something greater than all this thing that we call life. And so we begin to seek that. But even in that time, in that knowing, oftentimes, like a little baby, we don't have the idea of what true space and time is, that there is no thing outside of ourselves to seek, but that there's something within us that we're seeking. Something that has always, always been there. So first we need to seek that which is our true consciousness, what we call in unity our super phase of consciousness, our spiritual consciousness. And when we seek that, we begin to enter an experience of what Jesus referred to as the kingdom. So Jesus was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God would come. So sort of like me driving down the highway with these two dogs. It's like, am I there yet? When is it going to come? And when am I going to get to Chicago? And he said the kingdom of God is not coming with signs to be observed, nor will they say, look, here it is, or there, for behold, the kingdom of God is in the midst of you, he said. So right here and today, I want to tell you, no matter what you're experiencing in your life, whether you're totally living in that realm of joy and peace and love right in this moment and everything seems to be in harmony, or if your life seems to be coming apart, maybe you're feeling hopeless about something in your life, whatever that is and everything in between, we need to seek and know that here it is right now. And sometimes as a human being, that's difficult to do because we're standing at those tracks. And it's like, well, I can only stand on this rail or that rail. But when we begin to look in the moment, to observe, to have a different perception, then we can behold it. And this perception comes through forgiveness. It comes through discovering the ability to allow. That means to let go and to allow our life to unfold. So we need to actually surrender. And sometimes that might be a difficult thing to do. And I want to go back to update you a little bit of what happened since I was here. Life has really, really has upped things for me big time. So I'm driving to Chicago. And as I'm driving, let me back up. 2 years ago, which I shared last time, at Unity Spiritual Center in Asbury, I was taking Mary Manon Morrissey's prosperity class. And we were supposed to make a strong, bold declaration. My declaration was this, that I was going to master health, wealth, and relationships. And then a year and a half later, when all this hit last July, it looked nothing like mastery. It was a mess. It was a mess. And what happened for me as a minister was like, and feeling hopeless, it was like, I must really have failed as a minister that I'm feeling this hopeless. But no, I'm going to tell you that we get to experience everything. We cannot know joy unless we know the deepest hopelessness. We spend a lot of time and energy trying to avoid feeling this. 10 days ago was Ascension Thursday. I don't know if any of you are ex-Catholics, but that was always something big to me. And I remember the Apostles' Creed, and it's till this day, I've wondered about it, but I kind of get an idea now what it meant. It says in there that after Jesus was crucified, died, and was buried, he descended into hell, and 3 days he arose again, and then he ascended into heaven. Ascended into heaven. What did that mean? I mean, I said it rotely. I haven't been a Catholic since 84 or 85, but still, I think about this a lot. I ponder it because something says there's some truth hidden here, a golden nugget. And here's the golden nugget, I think. The golden nugget is in order for us to ascend, as Jesus said that we would do what he did and greater. So what he did at that point, he was able to rise up out of any physical situation. And we know that what he went through the crucifixion probably makes our lives look like a piece of cake, right? What had happened to him during that time is he was mastering these energies that are here in the earth. He became the person that opened the way to us so that we could follow in his steps and do it ourselves. He didn't come to save it and do it for us. Okay? He opened the way and said, if you follow me, he said, come follow me. In his life, he left a master plan for all of us, a master plan to follow. And when we can take a look at his life and follow as he did, I mean, the ability to forgive those who killed him right when he was hanging on the cross. How many of you are still trying to forgive someone that did something to you when you were 5 years old? Guess what? The way to mastery, the way to awakening, is to forgive. Because what it comes down to is when you realize that this is of our own creation, and why would we create all this? When we get to the grace part, maybe you will begin to understand. So, to enter that kingdom, to arise and to ascend, doesn't mean that we go up to heaven. What it means is that we rise out of being stuck in this loophole of transformation where we have to keep peeling the layers of onion skin, which was all good, and sometimes we still have to do that. But come on, how many more layers do you want to peel away? When do we get to heaven? Are we there yet? We're only halfway there. What does that make you feel like? I don't know if I can wait for another half of the story. The good news is you don't. It's in the surrender, in following the way of Jesus the Master, in forgiving in the moment, to let go of those things that we cannot change. The serenity prayer, the wisdom to know the difference. So here's a little exercise you could do for this part that might help. Take 2 pieces of paper. On the one, you put the things that I can control, the other one, the things that I can't control. And you make 2 lists. And when you get done making the 2 lists, take a deep breath and continue, because there's more to be unveiled. And do that 3 times. And when you're done, take the sheet that you can't control, ball it up, and throw it over your shoulder. Let it go. Let it go. And every time then in the future that you begin to feel like you can't control something, you don't have to write it down. Just sort of crunch, like pretend you're crunching a piece of paper, flip it over your shoulder. What it does, it actually, neurolinguistic programming teaches us that every time we do this physically, it gets in the groove of our brain, a different groove. Because we have some deep grooves that say, I can't forgive, I can't let go, I can't allow, because this was too hurtful. If you practice that, you'll create a new groove in which your brain will begin to operate differently. Because yes, we can change it. It's in our hands. Jesus is not going to come here and do it for us. He already did it. Now it's our turn to walk in his feet, the great master. So, back to my story. So, I'm driving to Chicago, and I have a deep groove in my brain about my family, because actually for 25 years or longer, 30 years, I had been actually not in relationship with them. They had actually ostracized me for all those years, and I had many years where there was a lot of pain around this, and I did a lot of letting go, and I finally went on with my life. But now I'm driving to Chicago, and I'm going to see my family that I haven't seen in years. So can you imagine a dress rehearsal going on in my head? And I kept going, well, what do we do? What do we do when we come across someone that we had a bad experience? We might avoid them. So I'm like, do I not even say hi to them? Ignore them when they're going to be right there? Well, that didn't seem very connected or, the right thing. Or do I go to them and just say, oh, hi, I love you so much. I really missed you these 30 years. That didn't seem right either. Or do I get mad and say, why the hell did you do this to me? So I had all this going on in my head. What do I do? And every time I had a thought, I was like, there's something greater than me that is moving through me now. I surrender, I allow. I don't know how to show up, but it knows how to show up through me. I spent Easter with my family for the first time in over 30 years. I knew in that moment that I had mastered the energy of relationships. Even if I didn't spend that Easter, the fact that I could show up and be there in the place of love, and if they didn't talk to me, I would have known I mastered the energy of relationships. My best friend was like, I don't believe it. OMG. Teresa kept going, if I didn't know you all these years and seen how this all went down, I would never believe this is nothing but a miracle. But here is the kicker. We never should pray. We should even give up the hope that anyone in our life that we care about will be different. Because when we're doing that, we're hoping that they'll change. And that's what I learned through this. So now I get to Chicago. and my father's 9. And okay, I'm getting my nose runs. I realize when I get inspired, it just started running. So, okay, so this is what I need to tell you. So my father on his deathbed is really suffering because he wants to see one of my brothers. And my brother's not coming because of how my father has showed up even a month earlier. And so I kept rehearsing because he was hoping my brother would come, and I'm having a conversation with my brother, why don't you just move through this now? I'm trying to encourage him to come see our father before our father passes. But he's not coming. And so I said to my dad, if he comes, I'm staying open to possibility. If he comes, this is what you need to say. I want you to say it with me. And it was like a dress rehearsal for a song. You say, I love you. I'm sorry for anything I ever did to hurt you. I forgive you for anything that I've ever held against you. Now, what are you going to say, Dad? I love you, but why didn't you come to see me? He didn't get it. My brother didn't come. But it's okay. I know that because of what happened afterwards with my brothers and I. We've made a commitment to love. We made a commitment not to let the money be the issue. I can literally speak to my brothers what I'm feeling, even if I'm upset. And they're like pussycats. I used to be afraid of them. Just last week, I was really irritated at something my brother said to me, and I told him, I said, I'm really feeling angry about this, and I told him why. And he said, I have to go now. In the past, they would have sent me down into hell. But I didn't let it. I just let it go. And he calls me about 4 hours later, and he goes, I want to apologize. He said, I had to work, he works nights, middle shift, and they made him come in for 2 days in a row for the morning shift. And he said, I'm just so cranky and tired that I took it out on you. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done that. And I said, that's okay. I love you anyway. He says, oh, why do you have to say those 3 little words, I love you? Because, see, I made an agreement because he said I was making things difficult for him. Because if you know me, I always say, I love you when I leave. And he was thinking he had to say, I love you back. So he said to me, I want you to know something. You're making my life difficult because my wife wants me to say I love her. I only do that on our anniversary and Christmas, maybe her birthday. And every time I say it to you, she gets mad at me because I feel like I have to say it to you. So I'm going to tell you, I love you. I'm not going to say it again. I said, that's okay. Just do one of those honorary things that big brothers do to their sisters, and I'll know you love me. So now my sister-in-law and I like to aggravate him and say those 3 little words. Life could not be sweeter. That's what heaven is like, for me anyway. It's walking in this parallel universe. It is being awakened to a point that we don't have to suffer anymore, despite what happens. And there is a profound knowing that I am awake. Life is different. So my health is better. My relationships got better. I'm still trying to master wealth. However, things are getting better. Okay? The day my father died, I get a call that my tenant vacated my house in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Oh, my dad asked me to live in Chicago for 1.5 years till his house was sold, and I said yes. So I thought I was relocating to Chicago, changed my address and everything. So 2 weeks later, I find out, no, I'm not staying there because his trust was invalid and I could leave. So I decided to move into this house in Bethlehem since it was vacant, and I'm paying for it. So I just yesterday moved into my house. And so I have lived in the course of a few months here in Maryland, in Frederick, in Chicago, and now Bethlehem. But this is the grace. That no matter what we have to do in the physical, we have the energy to do it. My back was hurting so bad last night, I was like, I'm going to be doing the talk like this. Here I am. That is what being awake is like. And in all this, what we do is we find out about grace. Now, in the beautiful song that you sing, it's about grace being God moving through us and doing something to us. But I'm saying that we are God's grace expressing in the world. So I spoke last time that I had decided that I wanted to be a cancer coach, and I told you the miraculous story. I just came back Monday from my trip to Sacramento, and I am now a certified cancer coach. And I did my first workshop from Panic to Powerful last Sunday in California, and it was a huge success. And I have a vision that I'm going to be traveling, bringing my grace into the world. And in my workshop, at the coaching session 2 weeks ago, this is what I found out my grace was. And you have a grace too, and you can discover it, you may know it already. My grace is to bring hope. My grace is to bring hope in a world that oftentimes feels hopeless. That's what I'm here. I'm here to stand at anybody's side that feels feeling hopeless, to say, I'll stand at your side and help you discover your way out of the pit. And the thing with your grace, how you know it's your grace, everything in your life that you created actually supported you to learn how to bring that grace into physical reality, because you came in as spirit. So each one of us has a grace that we decided to bring into this world, and we created an experience around us to express it. And each and every one of you has a grace. How many of you know what Edie's grace is? I bet you. Bring joy, right? Bring joy. Okay? I could say this, and I hope you're not embarrassed, but I assume you're not. If you are, oh well, get over it. But we know that. That's what her grace is, right? And everything around you, I mean, you didn't know this all the time in your life. And you probably could look back and say, I had to be joyed despite what was going on in my life. Each and every one of us has a grace that we are bringing in to the world. That is the Spirit of God moving through and across the earth. And that's what we're about. If you don't know what your grace is, ask yourself to reveal to you your grace, and you'll know. And there goes my nose. I discovered this in my last couple talks, is like when this happens. So, take a deep breath, let it go, and know that you've come here to be grace in the world. And I like to end with a quote. And it's from The Way of Mastery, a wonderful book I discovered. And it says, the awakened mind that abides in perfect knowing no longer obstructs perceptions, feelings, the flow of thought, or the flow of experience. There's no obstructions. You're just sort of in the flow. You're in the movement. And you just sort of move through life with freedom and flexibility. It no longer seeks to see how it can make things different than they are. So you don't have to change any of this. It's perfect right now. It looks only and lives only from what it most truly wants, simply to abide in its own nature and to allow life to flow from the natural dancing in the infinite mind of form. That's what we seek. We seek to be the wind that blows through this earth. We seek to experience grace in the trees. We seek to feel it in the wisp of the cold winter rains, the warmth of the sun that touches our body, that embrace of the lover. We find it there too, and in the laughter of the child. Everywhere you look, shift your perception. Become like a child, and you shall enter the kingdom of heaven. God bless you.